Hi, everyone. Welcome to a Sunday talk within the Nine-Sided Circle. I am your host, Noor Kyle.
And I am her faithful sidekick, who is actually beside her tonight,
Yeah.
Mushtaq Ali.
Yep. We have guests, so we're sharing this space tonight, and that works for us. So thank you for joining us, whether you're here live or on the replay watching us on YouTube. So happy to have you here. Grateful for your presence. And it's really important that we have you guys here. It means a lot. It makes this thing happen. So thank you so much for that. And I guess a little bit of a YouTube spiel for the YouTube
Why not?
people. Yeah, as usual. The best ways to support us on YouTube are to do that whole liking, commenting, subscribing thing. Share our videos with your friends if you like.
Share our videos with your enemies if you don't like them.
Sure. Do that too. Maybe they'll learn something and be a better human being, and then you won't be enemies anymore. Who knows? You can also.
Did you
So
get subscribed to the channel?
I did,
It's
yes.
important.
Yep. And you can leave a comment and you can dialogue with the people who are already commenting in the chat. We do keep an eye on things. Doesn't get too crazy or anything, but we absolutely love it when people begin to share with one another. What else? Um, Retreat stuff. Yes, retreat registration is still open. We do have some spots left. It will be open until July 18th. So, we've got a bit less than a month now, but still plenty of time. If you are interested and haven't taken the plunge yet, we would love to have you join us in India this year.
Yeah, and we really want you to come. You know who you are. You need to be there. So
Yes, and
no pressure, though.
no pressure. But if you think it would be a fit for you, as we always say, then we absolutely think you should take us up on this rare opportunity because, as we often say, we don't go places where we are not invited. And
Invited.
we had the honor of being invited to India. So we're excited. And
And Rishikesh is one of the most beautiful spots in India.
yes, this is going to be an eco resort. Kind of, I don't know if it's in the middle or on the edge of the Himalayan mountains, but
It's
it's
not in
got,
the middle. It's in the foothills.
yeah, it's got
The middle
beautiful
of the Himalayas
views.
is like giant mountains and
Yes.
snow and ice and snow leopards.
And you can see some of that
Yeah,
from the resort,
which
which
is
is
the best way to see it from afar.
no getting lost or frozen to death on crazy
Devoured
mountaintop.
by carnivorous yaks or something.
You never know.
You never know.
What else do I need to share about that? All the details are on our landing page, and we have the link to that in the description, I believe.
Yep.
And if you have any further questions that aren't answered on that page, you can always send us an email, and that is also in the description. But I do want to inform everyone that this landing page offers you the opportunity to join the retreat mailing list. Signing up for that mailing list does not automatically sign you up for the retreat. So it's not a commitment if you're not ready to make a commitment. It's just a way for us to keep you up to date on any changes that are happening, any cool things that we've learned about what's going on. And it allows us to just know that you're interested
Yeah.
so that we can keep in
And
touch.
don't forget, tempt you with wonderful things so you know you have to go.
Well, yeah,
Get that part.
without the hard sell though,
Yeah.
because we don't do that. This is as hard as it gets. We're just trying to get the word out there. This is our once a week.
Once a week.
Give it all. Make sure people know that we have this awesome, cool thing happening. And yeah, so, indulge us and hopefully indulge us again by coming along. Again, we would love to have you. So that's that pretty much. Anything else?
Nope.
Nope.
Nope. Oh, yes, actually. We're going to be making some of our back when we first started this, we did some um several week classes on specific subjects. It was, and these are real classes. These are people there to learn, people there to give them the information. And we are going to be letting people buy these classes, and most of them are quite, 10-week long classes. So you got 12 to 15 hours of video, circles and arrows on all of the documents and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it's on stuff that we don't do in our live talks or do on YouTube because it was special to those workshops, and we would love to share that information in a way that makes sense for
Yeah.
us and allows you to have access to it.
So look for information on that, both in the mailing list and on the Nine-Sided Circle forum within the next week.
There you go.
Yeah.
And
And we'll probably do a commercial too.
oh gosh, yep.
Yeah.
As much as we hate advertising, sometimes we gotta do what we gotta do.
Yeah.
All
Well, we
right.
do negative advertising. You don't really want to buy this, but we'll let you know. And just in case you're crazy and you have more money than you think you need, you can use it to get this stuff.
Why not?
Why not?
Okay. So one-on-ones, we talk about that once in a while, and those are available too. We do two-on-ones. You can email us if you want further information about, you know, that kind of private consultation with us. So other than that, I'd like for us to wrap this up because I'm sure you're tired of listening to us.
I'm tired of listening. to
Yeah,
this.
word. Okay, so let's get to our topic then.
All right. What's our topic?
Our topic is the diffusion of the work.
East and West.
Hmm.
Yeah, you're going to have to blame Adrian for this talk because we were discussing some cool stuff. When was that? Yesterday. And it inspired me that we actually need to talk about some of this. We touched on it a few years ago, but time to do an update. Little history.
Yeah, I'm excited for this history lesson.
Yeah. So you all know that there was a World War I, right? You remember reading about that in history class or anything? Anybody remember what started it? No one?
Assassination of Archduke somebody.
Ferdinand, yes. That was the excuse. So all of the world powers got together and they teamed up. Various different sides. On one side was France and England and the United States, Japan, believe it or not, at that time. And on the other side was Germany, Austro-Hungary, and Turkey, and Russia at the time, Imperial Russia.
With the czars.
Yeah,
all that.
Tsar Nicholas the boob. And ended up getting his entire family killed through vast stupidity. No opinions there. About this time, so the tradition, the work, at least our line of it at this time was mostly focused in Central Asia and some in northern Iran. And at this time, over a period of years, it was decided by the people who decide these things that the work would withdraw itself from the Persian-speaking world, from Central Asia, from parts of Arabia, and pull back into the area of Turkey. Now, this was an incredibly contentious time. The war went on for what, 4 years? Lots and lots of people died. The war was, even by the level of wars, this was a stupid war.
Lots of death, lots of
Lots of trench
really-
warfare, Gallipoli, thousands, 250,000 people died who didn't really need to.
Visceral injuries.
Yeah, bad stuff. Now, the Allies, that was England, America, et cetera, won. And during this time, Russia decided to have a revolution. And they overthrew the Tsar, and then they withdrew from the war and formed, thanks to Lenin, the Soviet Union. Our folks saw the way the wind was blowing. They knew that things were going to be bad. And they were right, because what we experienced was the balkanization of what had been the Ottoman Empire, and all of that cool territory being divided up amongst European powers. So like the French got Syria and the English got Palestine, and I forget where we were with it, but someplace stupid that we shouldn't have been. And the Greeks wanted a whole big chunk of Turkey. And it was a free-for-all, dividing up the territory of the losers, especially the Ottoman Empire.
Arabian Peninsula.
Yeah, the Arabian Peninsula. And this is why the work was withdrawn from the Arabian Peninsula, because the people who were in charge of these things were smart enough to know that Wahhabism was not going to be healthy for Sufis. And they knew that the new Soviet Union was land hungry, and they were pushing into Central Asia. They grabbed Armenia, Georgia, and just started going east. So Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan all became part of they became Soviet protectorates.
And started going west or east.
They were going east. Yeah. And in Iran, the royal house was exerting a lot of control during that time. They didn't end up with the British sitting in their front yard at that point, but then I forget which Shah it was at the time, cut some deals and gave a lot of concessions to the Allies to keep them out.
Wheeling and dealing.
Wheeling and dealing. It wasn't all bad news. Jordan managed to carve itself out and get itself under the Hashemite family that King Abdullah is descended from. And that was not a terribly bad thing for them. Turkey was going to be carved up like a Thanksgiving pie. If the Allies had their way, there would be no Turkey left by the time they were done with it. The Greeks would have had Istanbul and that entire area. The French would have had the big tract of land near Syria. There would be nothing less. But there was this guy by the name of Kemal, who's known now as Ataturk, which means the father of Turkey. And he managed through a lot of wheeling and dealing and some serious revolution to take back and hold most of Turkey's territory. The West was tired of fighting. Nobody wanted to be out there having troops in that area anymore. So he basically drove them out and kept Turkey together, kept Istanbul, and founded the Turkish Republic. Now, this is important for a couple of reasons. One of which was one of the first things he did, September the 2nd, 1926, I think, somewhere in there. He outlawed Sufism. He said, no more Sufis in Turkey. Closed all of the tekes, would arrest you if you used a title like Sheikh or Murshid or anything like that. It was like, no more Sufis, which for us was a wonderful thing. It was like the best possible thing to happen. Why would that be?
Why might, yeah,
Yeah,
take a,
It made people curious.
maybe, but that's not the answer. No.
I think it purges folklore.
Say again?
It purges the folklore, the folkloric ones.
Yeah, to a certain extent, but there's something more immediately practical. So, Sufis are outlawed in Turkey. You have Easterners or Westerners who come looking for Sufis. They go, hey, are there any Sufis in this town? And you can go, no, man, Sufis are outlawed here. Go over to Bukhara. Maybe you'll find some there. Go away. We don't talk about Sufis here. It is the best possible way to hide. At least that was how it was explained to me. It's like, we don't need to walk around wearing Sufi clothes. We don't need to have big public meetings. You know, the police are not going to come around and ask us why we were having a dinner with our friends. You know, so our tradition was able to just literally disappear into the woodworks, hidden in the shadows. And that allowed the work to be protected. Because if you know anything about Russia, and the Soviet Union was Russia, you know that they hunted down all of the mystical kind of stuff that they could get their hands on. They wanted to take it, make it their own, weaponize it, use it for their own ends. So, for instance, the things that we've been talking about, the concept of the hidden conversation, which allows you, if you were evil, to totally manipulate people. Right? So that kind of thing was withdrawn from the areas of Soviet influence. So the safe places were the Maghreb. The Maghreb is northern Africa. And that's only semi-safe, I have to say. The French weren't messing with Sufis in Morocco. The Italians ran into Omar Mukhtar, and that did not go well for them. That's a whole different story. But so the work went into a form of occultation, which means it became hidden. The baraka was withdrawn from a lot of areas, and that included a lot of Central Asia. It included a lot of Afghanistan. And this is over years. This is not immediately the next day. This is over years as things were pulled out to be safer. Afghanistan was safe until the early 60s. And then the Russians moved in, and it became a not fun place. While Saudi Arabia was no place for Sufis, Yemen had some cool people there. some of the Gulf states had some interesting stuff going on. But mostly it was hidden along North Africa and in the greater area of Turkey where it was illegal.
Hidden in plain sight.
Hidden in plain sight. Sufis? We don't got to show you no stinking Sufis. So are you following so far? Somebody keeps dropping off.
Adrian's asking about Pakistan.
Pakistan didn't exist then.
Who is that? Oh, Chris is here.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. So India was an interesting special case. It was already being dominated by the British Empire. And that was problematic in a lot of different ways.
How do you think about it?
Chris,
Hola.
hola, ¿cómo estás?
Pretty good. Look who's checking us out.
Oh my God. He's getting big.
He's 1 year old as of yesterday.
Oh my
Wow.
God, happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you. Say thank you.
Yay. Well, I'm glad you guys can join us.
Yeah, same here.
Welcome to the
Sorry, I
history-
didn't have my mute on.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, that's okay. We have more messages.
more messages.
Pakistan, although it came later.
Yes. Yeah, India is an interesting case because of the domination of the British East India Company and the British Raj. And even though they did not get in the way of Sufism as bad as they could have, they did act in a way to suppress it. Because dervishes tend to be uncontrollable by the outside forces. But interestingly, when the Baraka began to emerge again, one of the places where it did emerge was India, and that was with the Chishtis sending Inayat Khan to the west as a little feeler.
How would we define Baraka in this context?
Baraka literally means blessing. And you can talk about it as if it was a sort of energy, but it doesn't quite do it justice. It is a matrix within which the work can most easily happen. When it's there, it's easier for people to do the work. The work is never easy, but easier. There's a certain amount of lubricant for it. When it is not there, events do not align auspiciously. Anybody who has a better definition, kick it out there, because this is one of these things that's hard to explain in English.
Yep.
So where the Baraka is, it is easier for the work to take root.
And to stick around.
And to stick around,
Be
yes.
safe and sustainable and all of those things.
Yeah, and I'm skirting around India a bit because I don't know as much about that as I know about Turkey, Central Asia, and the northern states, Iran, and that sort of thing. India is outside of my direct knowledge. So I know what they tell me. So what does this have to do with us now?
Well, assuming that wasn't a rhetorical question,
It wasn't.
um, it sounds as though you guys are building Baraka on the internet.
Inshallah. And we are tiniest, smallest, ittiest, bittiest, like this part of this. I would love to say we are the emissaries from the East, but that would be total bullshit.
And we know that.
And we know that.
I'm sure that you all know that.
Yeah. We are very, very small cogs in a very, very big wheel that is turning in interesting ways just now. And this has been going on for a while. So who knows what the first proper Sufi incursion into the United States was. There's a little bit of argument about this, but I'll give you my view.
Well, you asked them to give them your view.
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you guys think it may have been?
Yeah.
It would
I would assume you don't mean Gurdjieff.
No, I don't mean Gurdjieff.
Yeah, right.
like specifically Sufik, right?
Specifically Sufik. Maybe through the slave trade a little bit, but that's not what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, that was from Adrian.
Yeah.
That's a good point, though, actually. That's a
There
very
were
good point.
a lot of Muslims that were brought over on the slave trade. And a lot of Moriscos who came over with the Spanish.
Okay, so we're talking
We're talking for, no, we're
Not-
actually talking 19th century.
19th century for this. Okay.
19th century Sufism in the public eye.
Hmm.
I thought you mentioned it. I thought it was Inayat Khan. Was it?
Before Inayat Khan.
Huh.
Before Inayat Khan, before the Shah brothers. Believe it or not.
Oh, James, do you have a?
I was just going to take a wild stab in the dark. So if you've got something more definite, I'll let that pass.
Yeah, take a stab in the dark. It's fun to see what people.
A little bit conspiratorial, but there's arguments about Sufi / Freemason intermingling.
Yeah,
happening.
there's a little bit of that out there in the world, but that was kind of hidden.
Yeah, okay.
In the
Ah.
public eye, believe it or not, it was Walt Whitman. Walt Whitman was a dervish. He was initiated. He was a Qadiri. And that's specifically for America. If you doubt me, get a hold of a copy of Leaves of Grass and look up a poem called A Persian Lesson.
We may actually,
We may have to read it.
as an aside, that may be our retreat theme this year for our virtual retreat.
Okay. Yeah, it could be.
Yeah. Walt Whitman.
Yeah.
Anyways.
And then, of course, there was Sir Richard Burton for the Brits. And Sir Richard Burton was also an initiated dervish. If he had not been a member of a particular tariqah, he would have never gotten into Mecca. They helped him get there. So that's how far back it goes. These little tendrils coming out into the West. And then right at the turn of the 20th century, you have this great indrawing of breath. The baraka becomes withdrawn from the world, specifically to protect it from all of the crazy stuff. We've got a baby, so I can't use bad language. Damn it. So the thing about the work, the thing about the tradition is that it protects itself and it knows how. It's been doing it for over 1,000 years. And
we could say that's been happening all along through the slave trade, people who came over through that, and all kinds of circumstances in which people were not safe to share these traditions and these aspects of themselves and their spiritual practice.
James found it. You want to read it for us, James?
Yeah, why not? See if I can keep a straight face for once when I read poetry. For his overarching and last lesson, the greybeard Sufi, in the fresh scent of the morning in the open air, on the slope of a teeming Persian rose garden, under an ancient chestnut tree, wide spreading its branches, spoke to the young priests and students. I didn't copy the rest because it was too much.
Yeah.
That was just.
Yeah, we'll save it for
I just want that Sufi reference right explicitly there.
Yeah, but the second part is the best part, man.
The second part?
Yeah.
The actual. Oh, I've closed that window, bugger. Have I?
Just have to go look.
Yes, I have. Damn it.
Well, they'll have to go look.
It exists. It's true. We're not being lied to.
No, well, you might be being lied to, but not about that.
Use history and recently closed, and you should be able to open it right back up.
Anybody can just look this up and find it for themselves if they are interested.
It really wants me to. Okay. Let's get the link. Come on, you stupid computer. Whitman archive. Copy. There's my. Do that. Do that now. Stupid machine.
It's okay, James.
Okay, there's a link.
Okay, there's the link for everybody. Yeah, now you have to understand the significance of this, because today we don't think much of Walt Whitman, most of us. We don't think about him. In his lifetime, he was the poet laureate of America. He helped get us through the Civil War. He was the voice of our hearts in so many ways, and he spoke truth. And for him to put up a poem about Sufis is an interesting thing, because a whole bunch of people would go, "What's a Sufi? What is this talking about?" And they'd start looking. Now, I have a friend who insists that Herman Melville was actually the first person to write about Sufism, but not as overtly. But so we have that. Now, think about the great inhale. Pulling in from all of the places that are being thrashed, that are being taken over by the East and the West, and tucked away for a little while. What's the first thing that happens?
Not sure what you mean.
Mr. Gurdjieff shows up in the West, in Russia, shortly before the war. He escapes from the war and from the Soviets through the Caucasus with a whole bunch of Russians who would have probably been taken out and shot by Stalin had he not gotten them out of the country. And there are people say that he was an emissary of the tradition, but I don't think he was. I think he was a very smart guy who a lot of dervishes liked and who taught him a bunch of cool stuff that he then used to craft his own idea of what the work should be like. And that's why it happened for a while. It was a beautiful flower that never produced seeds. That's going to piss some people off.
The Gurdjieff work.
The Gurdjieff work, yeah.
Really, the fourth way, almost in general.
And the fourth way and the Gurdjieff work is pretty synonymous at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, opinions vary on it.
Adrian says, canary in the mine.
Yeah. I can tell you that he was watched very carefully. And as far as anybody knows from our tradition, he never took bayat with any tariqa.
Initiation.
Yeah, initiation. So that means he never got the good stuff in the full, because he could never stick around long enough. So, what happened next? Who knows their Sufi history of the West? There was the Inayatis, Hazrat Inayat Khan and his family, which are now in the third generation. Pir Zia is his grandson and is running their thing now. And that was, I think, another canary in the coal mine sort of thing.
How so?
In the sense of, how can we give people a little bit of Sufism without scaring the straights? You know, the Sufi order of the West was very innocuous. It was not scary at all to most people. And then the Sufi Islamia Ruhaniyat Society came quite a bit later. They were scary for a completely different reason, because they were a bunch of hippies, led by a crotchety old student of Inayat Khan's. But again, you didn't have to take them seriously. They just were out there doing the Sufi dances in the park and having a good old time. And, you know, yeah, those guys were not as well known, but they were important in that they began getting ideas out.
People can't see the chat. I don't know.
Yeah, Renee, it's French, so I can't say it.
No.
There's René Guénon, Christophe Chouan,
Yeah, those
Martin
guys.
Lings, and those guys.
Yeah,
I mean, Guénon was engaged, was in a tariqa, in a Shadili tariqa in Cairo.
yeah, one of those North African ones that I
Yeah.
mentioned in the beginning of this talk. So yeah, they had an influence, but it was not a big one. Gurdjieff's influence was greater than him for whatever reason. And the same with Inayat Khan. He had a lot of people being attracted to him. And then it wasn't until the 60s that we saw a real extension of the work back into the world. Anybody think who those were? Anybody but Adrian? No? The Shah brothers. Idris Shah, Omar Ali Shah. Was there another one? Seems like there was. No, I'm thinking of the Khan family.
They had a sister
Yeah,
called Amina, and she wrote some, was a storyteller, but it was
yeah,
not a
children's
Sunni.
books, as I remember. Yeah, but they were definitely another canary in the coal mine. Another, how will people deal with this? And it was a more radical one than Inayat Khan was. He was just this nice universalist guy. Everything is love, hearts with wings, all of that. Nobody's going to get scared. For all of Idris Shah's flaws, he would scare the shit out of people. And that's something I can appreciate because he rattled a bunch of cages. And it wasn't until after that that you saw tariqas arriving from the east again. You saw the Mevlevis, a completely revised Mevlevi tariqa. You all know what happened to the original Mevlevi tariqa when Ataturk outlawed dervishes.
They probably don't.
Probably don't. I mean, everybody should know this. This should be in all the history books. I'm not sure what's up with that. The head of the Mevlevis, the Murshid, who was a direct descendant of Rumi, emptied the coffers and fled to Europe and left the Mevlevi
High and dry.
high and dry. Yeah, they took them a long time to get their shit back together. And it wasn't until the Mevlevis they were being run by this kind of political committee up until Suleiman Dede. Suleiman Dede was a recipient of the Baraka. There's no doubt about that. I knew him. I knew his son, Jalaluddin. And
so they were able to pick up the
they
pieces.
were able to pick up the pieces. And if it wasn't for them, there would not be Mevlevis around the world.
Mhm.
Somebody said something somewhere.
I think you're getting emails and stuff. I think that's what that is.
How weird.
Facebook messages.
Shouldn't be. But who knows about these things? Nope.
Yeah, I don't know what that pop.
That's what it is. Hands going up.
Hands up. Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
All right. Adrian, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I heard back in the day when I was visiting Konya when I was visiting Konya and had some contact there, it was that the head of the Mevlevi order switched supposedly through Suleiman Dede to Istanbul, and in Konya they had deputies, but the show was not being run by the community in Konya.
Yeah.
It was from Istanbul.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was the political thing going on.
There was a way to neutralize the folklorization of the Mevlevis that was taking place during decades, I guess, in Konya, and to bring back to certain seriety, back to the path.
Yeah, because that was a thing. The Konya figured out that the whirling dervishes were big money. Tourism, yeah.
The mystique of the whirling dervishes of the East.
Yep. And it had some strange effects, including on me. I will tell you about that after we see what Ian has to say.
Yeah, I just wanted to come back to Idris Shah because it was from his books that I learned about Mullah Nasruddin, and also I think he had a book called Tales of the Sufis.
Oh yeah, he put out tons of books that are just packed with stories from various Sufi masters, poetry, stuff like that. As a matter of fact, for those of you who hang out to the end of this, I have a story. Shah told a version of this story. I have our version of the story, because it has to do with Ahmed Yasevi. And I'll tell it to you guys as the ending of all of this, because the beginning of our talk is found in the ending of this story. Now we're all excited.
Okay, so you were going to share about your experience
Yeah.
with Mevlev.
So 1955, something like that. There's a TV show that I used to love, called You Asked for It, sponsored by Skippy Peanut Butter. And one of the episodes, I have never been able to find it again, and I looked recently, but there's a lot of episodes of that show, was called, somebody said in a question, what are whirling dervishes? And they sent a crew to Konya and they filmed the Mevlevis. And I remember as a kid sitting in front of my little 24-inch black and white TV screen with the rest of the family, watching these people do the turn and listening to the most incredible flute music I had ever heard in my life. It totally captured me. And I'm pretty sure that that was a turning point, though I didn't know it at the time. So the Baraka came back to the Mevlevis in various ways. So during the early 60s, the Shahs made an opening that allowed the Baraka to re-enter the world. I hate to give them credit for it, but I kind of got it because they sort of did.
So you're talking about Idris Shah.
Idris and his brother, probably his brother in more ways than Idris, for reasons that we don't need to go into right now. But
They allowed for an opening.
they allowed for an opening, and it was an important opening. And yes, there were problems. And, you know, God works with flawed clay to sculpt his reality. What can I say?
I mean, I'm just thinking that's true. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, look at us.
yeah.
But so right now we are at the tail end of that phase, as far as I can tell, and at the beginning of a new phase. And the new phase looks completely different than the old phase. The new phase, as I understand it, and bear in mind that I am, like all human beings, liable to err. So take this with a little salt, just a few grains, a few more grains than that. Add some more grains. And then I will say that there is a necessary transformation going on in the work. And if it happens, there is a possibility for the world to be a better place. We are a very small part of that. There are things happening out in the world that are way more important than us. So as much as I would like to claim to be the Qutb al-Zaman and the head of all the Sufis and all of that, I ain't. Yeah, I'm small. This is small. This is like I said, this is very small gears in a very big machine. But it's moving. And one of the ways in which it is moving is that we are moving from a top-down hierarchical setup to a more horizontal method of teaching.
Less high control.
Less high control, low control. High control is for dealing with children. If you are a playground monitor for an elementary school, you need to exert high control so the kids don't kill each other. We are no longer working with children. We are working with adults or people who are aiming to be adults.
Sufism for adults, Adrian. Yes, thank you.
Yes,
That's the goal.
that's the goal. We're all struggling to get there, but that's all right.
Yeah. But that's part of it,
Yeah.
right? The fact that we acknowledge there is a struggle and persevere to work through that struggle, to incorporate it into the work that absolutely needs to be done in order for us all, frankly, to survive.
Yeah, and by survive, she means survive.
I do. Yes. I mean, we have the capacity now truly to destroy one another.
And we're working up to it. I just saw in the news today that Serbia is rattling its sabers at Kosovo again. So we're going to get ethnic cleansing 2.0 there if we aren't careful.
Yeah, and it's always been possible to harm fellow human beings, but what I'm talking about is the point at which we hit the capacity to fully wipe ourselves out with little effort.
Yeah, and we're kind of there. We're on the edge of it.
Right.
And Russia/Ukraine and Israel/Palestine are two really good examples of that.
And as brutal as they are, they're symptoms of this, what do they call it? The terror of this situation.
Yep.
And
Yes, Ian.
Yeah, I was just going to say that at a much lower level of the scale, but it's still there, is the rise of the far right in Europe, and here we've got the fact that Trump is somehow
The fact that Trump,
around
Yeah.
around the level of Biden in the polls, I find just mind-boggling.
yeah, the fact that Trump has not been tarred and feathered and ran out of town on a rail constantly floors me.
Likewise.
Osama,
Hello. Man, this is a lot to
yeah,
unpack.
it is.
I was having a conversation with a few friends about a week ago, and it was along the lines of kind of what we were talking about a little bit. And there's this feeling that more beehives are needed.
Yes.
And real areas of waking up Saudi Arabia would be like on the top list of that area, of where, you know, these beehives need to be.
Yeah, and that's going to be tricky.
Yeah.
Saudi
And
Arabia, Iran. It's like, I am
yeah.
glad I'm too old to go out and do field work anymore.
And it's scary, and that's what we're talking about. You know, what it was actually after the Two Talk Sunday. So it was on Monday that we had this conversation, and I remembered the story about the that you guys told about the bird in the cage and this trick and all that, and flying away for freedom. It's like, what convenience, what comfort are we you know, putting ourselves in these cages in order to be, as a society, in order to be, okay, you know, we're going through all this, but hey, we're present. Hey, we're present, but we're going through all this, and I'm awake, but we're still going through this. So yeah, this conversation is on point, and it is needed. And to be honest, a part of me is also scared. There's a bit of fear in it because you know, like you guys mentioned, there is this feeling of like, yo, some really crazy stuff might go down. And at the same time, to do that field work that you just mentioned, there's fear in that regards.
There's
For me.
inherent risk in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean,
yeah.
when I was a field operative dervish, it wasn't that hard. You know, my sheikh would say, I want you to go to this town and start a martial arts school. So I go to the town and I start a martial arts school. And then he says, when people ask, you can make a meeting 1 day a week and talk about Sufism. And surprisingly, people started asking. And then he said, when people ask, you can lead a zikr. And that started happening. That was easy. Now imagine doing that in Rida.
But that's the thing, and I'm glad I saw a post for from Wael, one of our beloved brothers.
Yeah. And who is now one of the field agents.
Yeah, and you know, seeing, I'm like, man, that's like he's putting in the work in a
Yeah.
place where it's, you know, he's doing the real work, and it's absolutely inspiring. You know, so yeah, thank you for this. This is on point.
Yeah. Just remember that Allah might be looking at you and trying to see how you're going to fit out as a field agent too.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, ultimately, we can all find ways in which we can do this work. It doesn't have to be as obvious as, you know, trying to find the nooks and crannies of, you know, access in communities that are entrenched in these really, how do I put this? You know, these communities that are really resistant to these ideas of awakening and adulthood. We are always going to encounter that wherever we are, just in different forms. So how do we find ways to challenge that that are appropriate for our particular contexts, abilities, communities? That's where we need to get creative. And we can always talk to one another about how to go about doing that. We can collaborate on that.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. And our mandate, our little tiny part of this bigger thing is to train teachers. That's what we do. I have trained teachers for the last 30 years. That has been what I do in the world. Not just Sufi teachers, but any kind of teacher. But in this case, here you come to learn how to teach and to get the skills to teach. And we don't care if you take those skills out and teach them as here's Sufism, or here's dance, or here is a way to cook meals in a restaurant that make people joyous to eat there. Doesn't matter. You don't have to call yourself a Muslim or a Christian or even anything.
A Sufi.
Yeah,
I mean, I can't emphasize that. We can't emphasize that enough.
yeah. And we have our people, the people who we work with, are doing some pretty weird things out there. Chris is an example. Where are you, Chris? Are you still here?
Yep. Doing weird stuff in the desert.
That's right, doing weird stuff in the desert, regenerating Sonora, making this tiny little town that was basically, the last time I went through Superior, it was about that far from a ghost town. And all of a sudden, it's alive again.
Yeah. So Chris has his own unique, awesome way
Yeah.
of doing this work too.
It doesn't look anything like being a Sufi, except when nobody's looking, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Maybe around the fire things change a little bit, but
Yeah.
Yes.
And so our job is to support people who do things like that and help all of you who have the interest to find ways to use your particular gift in the world to introduce people to the work in whatever way you do. You know, Adrian is a musician. Music is a wonderful way to reach people. Osama is a musician, slightly different musician. So you get to reach way across the board that way.
Poet as well.
Yeah.
By the way, anytime, Osama. Anytime.
Yes, yes.
And then we have Brian, who works with people's bodies to get them healthy.
And a number of other things
Yeah,
too.
yeah. And Cherie does the same sort of thing in a completely different way.
Parenting is another aspect of
Yeah.
this. As I'm sure Mr. Keem well knows.
Yep. And we don't know what Anissa does, but it's got to be cool. So
Wow.
Yeah.
She's cool, so it's got to be cool.
yeah, that's what I figured.
Yeah.
So
And Diva as well.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't know who else is here. James is on a journey,
yep,
so he's got some plans.
yeah. I think we're all bozos on this bus.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't all have to look the same.
No, as a matter of fact, it shouldn't all look the same. It should look like what you do.
Diva, did you have a thought?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, I had a hair salon before I retired, and that's all I talk. Instead of, everyone wanted to talk about famous people and what people talk about at hair salons, but I wouldn't. I would tell them about Sufism and the Gurdjieff and just give them a spiel every time. So it was a lot of fun. Now I'm kind of lost. So in Grand Rapids. So I'm trying to find my way here.
It's the next leg of the journey.
Yep.
Yep.
And Grand Rapids desperately needs some of this stuff. And better you than
Ian. Did you have something you wanted to share, Ian?
Oops. I forgot to click the button.
No worries.
I was going to say that one of the things I find really interesting about this is that many, 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 many years ago, I used to think, oh, I want to be a teacher of some sort. And then over the years, I decided I didn't want to do that at all. And so this idea that this group is about teaching teachers is something I find really interesting at this particular point in time for me. I've got no idea whether that's something I want to do, but what I seem to find is that I'm fascinated by the work that you do, and I find that it's extremely helpful for me. And somehow I find that my path seems to be in some kind of synchrony with whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah, if you ever figure out what that is, let us know.
But
Now,
anyway,
the thing is, what it might be for you may not look anything like sitting in front of a group of people or being in a classroom, because sometimes the teaching happens in simple encounters and it doesn't look like you're teaching, but just being present with somebody can become a teaching methodology.
Well, I also think about your contributions to the conversation here, Ian.
Yeah,
Like, we benefit from the wisdom that you bring to this group.
and your nitpickingness. We
And
appreciate
I see
that.
everyone nodding too. So
Yeah.
I'm not the only one who feels that way.
yeah, I must admit that just in my regular interactions in the world, I do occasionally get an opportunity to nudge people.
Yeah,
Doesn't seem to do much as far as I can
most
tell.
of the time it doesn't.
But who knows over
Yeah.
time?
20 years down the road, you might get a note from somebody who goes, yeah, 20 years ago you said this to me and I just discovered that it changed my life. It could happen.
It's almost like I don't know if everybody knows the story of like Johnny Appleseed or whatever, but it's a little bit like that, where you are just going about your life and your influence, just the little tidbits you may have to offer just offhand, can be life changing.
Yeah.
And the
Planting apple trees, teaching people how to make hard cider.
there you go. Yes, yeah. Just kind of letting things fall where they may, and you never know what's gonna rise out of the ground from the seeds that you've planted.
We shall see.
Yeah. So y'all want to hear a story?
All right, story time.
Yeah, because this does relate.
Is this about Papa Yasevi?
Yep.
It is.
Yay.
So once upon a time, there was a great emir. He had a small kingdom, but it was a very powerful kingdom. In his youth, his father sent him to a tekke, a dervish conclave, to be trained by them. And so he spent his younger years as a dervish, and he came back and he applied what he learned to ruling. And he became, through that, a great emir. And he looked around and he realized that even though he had power and he had money, he was not able to teach people what he wanted them to learn. When they heard him at all, they acted in fear of punishment or in hope of reward, rather than from doing the right thing. And the emir realized that he did not have the way to teach that he needed. And he struggled to near the end of his days before he could do anything. One day, the emir was out hunting, and he got separated from his men. And he stopped to rest his horse by the side of a stream, and he sat down. And strangely enough, a man dressed in green came up the stream. Looked like he was riding a fish. That was pretty weird. The emir thought he was hallucinating. And he stopped and he said, "Oh, great emir, what's going on?" And the emir explained to him his need to be able to help his people in some way, to take the knowledge that he had acquired in his lifetime and to give it to all of them. And so the strange man in green sat down and he said, "I'm going to tell you a story. This is the tale of the book." The green man said, "A wise man, a great wali." Wali is a saint. Wali means friend, a friend of God. Spent years teaching his murids, his students, from an almost inexhaustible store of knowledge. He attributed his knowledge to this thick book that he kept in a place of honor in his room. And this great wali would not let anybody touch the book, and would not let anybody open it. Then he died. And when he died, his students went to the room and they looked at the book. And they looked at the book some more. They wanted to know what was in it. They opened the book and they paged through it. And all of the pages were empty. Fortunately, somebody continued paging through it. And there in the middle of the book, in the middle of the page of the book, was a couple lines of text. And they read it. They tried to understand the meaning of it, and they couldn't. And the line said, "When you realize the difference between the container and the content, you will have knowledge and understanding." They were clueless. It's like, how could this great wali call this the book that gave him his knowledge? So they took it to the scholars of the town, of the city that they were in. And they said, "This belonged to our teacher." And he said that this contained all of the wisdom that he taught from. And the scholars, they were excited because everybody knew that their sheikh was like a light. He illuminated the entire world when he was alive. And so they began reading. And they thought this was some kind of joke, that the students were playing a prank on them or something. They were furious. They threw the students out. They said, "Get out of here, go away." And of course, they could not accept anything that the book was trying to tell them. The students were very dispirited, and going back to their tekke, they had to stop at a caravanserai for the night, and there was a dervish there. And he inquired about them, and they told him about the book. And he said, "What did you learn from the scholars?" And the student said, "Nothing. They could tell us nothing." And the dervish said, "On the contrary, they told you everything. They showed you that the book was not to be understood in the manner assumed by you or by them. You have to think that they lack depth, but you, in your turn, lack sense. The book was teaching something through the incident itself, and you remained asleep. But the students found this explanation too subtle for their minds, and only one person who was maintained the knowledge of the book was this one person was a casual visitor who overheard the whole thing, overheard these lines in the book. And he overheard the interchange. And the man in green said, "Oh, great Emir, do you understand? Do you understand now?" And then the man in green got up and walked away. The king was moved by the green man's story. And he ordered a book to be made, thick book, bound in beautiful leather and gold and such. And in the middle of the book, he wrote those lines and he put it in his treasury. And he saw the book in the place of honor and said, "Wonderful." Now, one of the conquerors that come through all the time conquered the kingdom. And he looked through the emir's treasury and he saw the book, and the book was so impressive. And he thought to himself, this has got to be the source of the prosperity of this kingdom. This is why everybody here is so happy. And he said, let the book be taken down and read out to me in my own language. But this warlord, for all of his power, was an idiot. And he could make no sense from the words in the book. The warlord ordered the book to be destroyed, but his interpreter, whose name was Malik, remembered the contents. He remembered the line in the book. It stuck with him. It stuck in his mind. And it was through this that the teaching was passed down. Malik opened a shop. He kept copies of the book that he had made. Nobody was allowed to look inside until they had paid 2 gold pieces for a copy. Some people who paid for the book learned the lesson. Some people didn't. Some people came back to Malik and they wanted their money back. But Malik always said, "I cannot give you your money back until you return to me what you have learned from the transaction. Give me back your knowledge and I'll give you your money." And of course, they couldn't. Some were very happy with the book. Some called Malik a deceiver, a con man. And Malik said to them, "You were all along seeking deceivers. So you assume that anyone you have found has got to be one." Now, Ahmed Yasevi was a young student at this time. And he bought a copy of the book from Malik, paying 2 gold pieces. The following day, he returned and gave Malik another 10 pieces of gold, saying, "I have learned from the book, what I've learned from the book is worth more than this. But since I have no more money than this, I give it all to you in token of my valuing this lesson is equal to my entire possessions." Ahmed Yasevi, who became one of the Khwajagan, the masters of wisdom, transmitted this knowledge. Ahmed had a history and had the history of the book and its content bound in a volume of over 200 pages on whose and on the cover of the book, it was written, if the thickness of books determines the value of their content, this one assuredly would be much thicker. Since the days of Ahmet Atta, this story has been transmitted over the last 700 years. And there you have it, the story of the book. Thoughts?
It seems pretty straightforward to me that there's a kernel to any kind of teaching, but it can be put into many forms, i.e. the containers. I'm not sure I have a lot more to say on that particular thing, but there was one thing I was reminded of as you were going through the story, which is that sometime last year, I started looking up the Green Man, and there's quite a mythology, shall we say?
Yep.
The Green Man. And I'm not sure how the Green Man mythology kind of got into this particular story. Because I'm sure it was deliberate.
Oh, yeah. It was totally deliberate.
Oops, sorry, my bad. Is there more? It says one.
Says there's one more, but there isn't one more. So
yeah, what's the significance of the Green Man, do you think?
the Green Man, of course, is Hazrat Khidr, the green one, the hidden prophet, an immortal master that is the servant of Allah, who was the teacher of Moses, who has throughout the history of Sufism has appeared to initiate certain dervishes, has given special messages. He's like he's like Santa Claus for Sufis.
Yes, the I think I've heard that bit of it before somewhere, but the material I was coming across last year was that was the Green Man in basically Celtic mythology.
Oh yeah, that's a different green guy.
Yeah.
Now Khidr, can't roll my KHs tonight. My mouth is too dry. It's very hot here. The name basically means the green one. And it's not because he is a god of the forests and the trees, but because he wears the colors of life. And the whole riding in on a fish, that's part of the legend. Khidr was the first guy who could use a fish as a skateboard.
Yeah. Well, there's this primordial aspect to him.
Yeah.
I think that's what I think may be one of the corollary things between these various iterations of the figure we call the Green Man. But in this case, he takes on that Sufi flavor.
Yep. Where is Adrian? Do you recognize the story, Adrian?
I do. I heard that story before. And that has many overtones. There's a variation of that story where the book is a ring, and in the ring is this too shall pass.
Yes.
There's another version, very similar structure. And there's a saying in Spanish: es de necios confundir valor con precio, which means only fools mistake value with price.
That's a good saying.
And now I have this otitis that's killing me, but there are some studies and similarities. I have to research in my archives between the Breton myth, Arthuric legends, and also some Sufi structures, such as with the Green Knight.
Yeah. Yeah, you're
I think you froze.
yeah, either you froze or your microphone went off. But yeah, the Green Knight, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Interesting story.